أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم قال له موسى هل أتبعك على أن تعلمني مما علمت رشدا قال له موسى هل أتبعك على أن تعلمني مما علمت رشدا
Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome to Rushd Career. If you're listening to these right now while you're pushing yourself to keep up, to remain relevant, or to make sure you are not quietly left behind, I want you to pause here before moving forward, just for a moment. Many of you are not struggling because you lack discipline or direction. You're not lazy. You're not drifting. You're driven. You are consistent and you're doing what you were taught would protect your future and earn your place. And yet, beneath all that effort, there is a tightness you cannot fully explain, a sense that even when you are moving, something inside you is bracing itself rather than resting. This episode is for the one who rarely stops because stopping feels unsafe. For the one whose calendar is full, whose days are productive, but whose heart feels unsettled even in moments of progress. For the one who mistakes exhaustion for ambition and anxiety for momentum, because slowing down feels like risk rather than relief. You tell yourself that this pressure is normal, that everyone feels it, that is simply what growth demands. But your body knows something your mind keeps postponing. Let me say this gently because gentleness is needed here for sure. Not all drive is clarity. Not all ambition is purpose. And not all movement is growth. Some movement is simply fear trying to stay ahead of uncertainty. Some ambition is anxiety dressed in discipline. Some drive is the soul trying to secure itself in a world that feels unpredictable. You are not weak for feeling this tension. You are human. You are navigating a system that rewards speed more than direction, output more than intention, and constant motion than meaningful alignment. You are surrounded by messages that equate rest with laziness and urgency with importance, even though neither of those equations are true. You're not behind, you're not failing, but it is possible that you're running on the wrong fuel. And fuel matters because what powers your striving determines where it eventually leads. Excellence is not built on panic, no matter how disciplined it looks from the outside. Sustenance is already written, yet fear still manages to exhaust the soul when it's allowed to lead. And a career powered by anxiety will never feel safe, no matter how far it goes or how impressive it appears on the outside. Today is not an invitation to abandon ambition or slow down for the sake of comfort. It is an invitation to honesty, to ask a necessary question before fear quietly shapes your decisions or your direction and even eventually your identity. Is this ambition guiding you forward or is it fear disguising itself as drive? Sit with that question, not to judge yourself, but to reclaim the clarity your heart has been asking for all along. Many Muslims hesitate to question their drive because they confuse it with responsibility. From an early age, they are taught that pushing through discomfort is maturity, that slowing down is risky, and that rest must be earned through relentless effort. So the idea of easing up feels irresponsible. It feels dangerous. There's an unspoken belief that if they stop pushing, everything will collapse. Bills will not be paid, respect will be lost, stability will evaporate, and so they keep moving. Not always because they feel inspired or aligned, but because stopping feels like exposure. This is not stubbornness, it is fear shaped by lived experience. Many have known instability before. Many have seen what happens when income disappears or opportunities dry up. Many carry memories of struggle that makes urgency feels necessary. But when fear becomes the primary fuel for ambition, even sincere effort begins to harden. What once felt purposeful starts to feel compulsive. The drive remains, but peace quietly exits. The problem here is not ambition. Islam never discouraged striving, planning, or excellence. The problem is what ambition becomes when fear is allowed to sit at its core. Fear of being insignificant in spaces that already question your value. Fear of financial vulnerability in systems that feel unforgiving. Fear of disappointing parent, communities, or younger versions of yourself who believed success would finally bring safety. Fear of returning to a life you worked so hard to escape. The Quranic worldview does not ask you to abandon effort. It asks you to examine attachment. It invites you to notice where your heart goes when outcomes feels uncertain. It asks what you believe will hold you when plans fail, when timelines stretch, when recognition is delayed, when ambition is rooted in trust. It feels expansive. It allows space for patience, recalibration, and reflection. But when ambition is rooted in fear, it feels urgent, heavy, and relentless. It does not tolerate pauses. It does not permit uncertainty. It demands constant proof. This is why so many people appear successful, yet feel unsettled. They are not chasing success as much as they are running from insecurity. And running, no matter how fast or how far, never brings rest. It only postpones the moment when the heart demands to be addressed. If this reflection feels uncomfortably close, if it touches something you have tried not to examine too closely, let it be a sign of awareness rather than weakness. It is not a sign of a fragile iman. It is a sign that your heart is asking to be heard, to be reassured, and to be anchored again in something more stable than fear. Drive that is powered by fear never truly rests. It keeps moving, not because it is inspired, but because stopping feels threatening. The goalpost shifts constantly. When you reach one milestone, relief arrives briefly, almost as a reward for endurance. But it does not stay. Almost immediately, another target appears, another standard, another reason to keep pushing. The body remains tense, the mind stays alert, the nervous system never fully stands down. You tell yourself this is hunger, this is ambition or discipline, but very often it is self protection masquerading as drive. Modern psychology explains this state as anxiety induced hypervigilance. The mind learns to scan constantly for risk, comparison, and potential failure. Islam names the condition at a deeper level. When the heart does not fully trust Allah with provision, dignity, or outcome, it compensates by trying to control everything it can reach. This does not mean the person lacks belief. Many believe sincerely. They pray, they remember Allah. But fear has grown louder than trust. And so, effort becomes excessive, rigid, and unforgiving. This is why fear driven ambition never satisfies. It promises safety, but it cannot deliver it. No amount of achievement convinces the heart that it is finally secure. Insecurity cannot be outrun. It does not disappear through speed or success. It only quiets when it is addressed with honesty, with compassion, and reliance on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Confidence that is built on fear is fragile. It looks strong while momentum is high, while progress is visible, while affirmation is frequent. But the moment growth slows, the moment feedback fades, or the moment circumstances shifts, that confidence collapses. It collapses inward. What remains is exhaustion and self doubt because the foundation was never stable to begin with. This is not a call to abandon drive. It is a call to examine what is driving it. When trust replaces fear at the center, ambition becomes steadier, effort becomes lighter, and progress no longer feels like something you must chase in order to feel safe. Now, I need you to pause here for a minute because this is where many people confuse motion with direction. There is a form of ambition that does not come from vision or calling, but from survival. It looks like drive on the surface, but beneath it is fear trying to stay ahead of uncertainty. In this state, you're not dreaming expansively. You're protecting yourself. You're not imagining contribution or impact. You're quietly securing escape routes. Every decision is filtered through one question, even if you never say it out loud. Will this keep me safe? This kind of drive is understandable, especially for those who have known instability or precarity before. Wanting safety is not a moral failure. Islam does not shame the desire for security, but when safety becomes the ultimate goal, something subtle happens to the soul. The heart begins to contract. Possibilities narrow. Risk is avoided, not because it is unwise, because it threatens the fragile sense of control you're trying to maintain. Over time, the pursuit of safety begins to shrink your inner world. This form of ambition rarely asks whether a path is aligned with values, purpose, or sincerity. It asks whether it feels predictable, whether it reduces uncertainty, whether it protects you from loss. And while these questions sound practical, they can quietly displace deeper ones. The believer was never promised comfort, they were promised provision. Comfort speaks to ease and predictability. Provision speaks to trust, to reliance and sufficiency from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They're not the same thing, and confusing them leads to subtle misalignment. When safety becomes the organizing principle of your career, you start choosing certainty over meaning. You remain in spaces that drain you because they feel familiar. You accept roles, workloads, or compromises not because they resonate, but because they reduce fear. You say yes, not from intention, but from anxiety about what might happen if you say no. And slowly, without a clear decision, purpose is postponed, not rejected, but deferred again and again until it feels distant and unrealistic. There is a quiet warning here that Islam offers without harshness. What you protect excessively begins to control you. When safety becomes something you must constantly defend, it demands your attention, your energy, and eventually your freedom. Reclaiming purpose does not mean abandoning responsibility. It means reordering it. It means trusting that Allah's provision is not confined to the narrow path fear is willing to walk, and allowing ambition to once again serve meaning rather than merely preserve comfort. Now, before we talk about discipline and excellence, we need to talk about trust. Fear driven ambition thrives on control. It creates an inner contract that says if everything is planned tightly enough, monitored closely enough, and executed perfectly enough, then nothing will fall apart. There is little margin for error, little room for delay, almost no tolerance for uncertainty. The mind stays alert, always anticipating what might go wrong next. Planning becomes a form of emotional regulation rather than strategic clarity. You tell yourself that this is responsibility, this is discipline and foresight. But beneath it, fear is trying to manage life on its own terms. Control is an illusion that collapses the moment life deviates from the plan. And life always deviates. One unexpected delay, one missed opportunity, one unplanned shift, and the sense of safety you're clinging to unravels. The effort you invested in controlling outcomes suddenly turns into anxiety because the foundation was never stable. Islam offers a different framework, one that many misunderstand. Tawakkul. Tawakkul is not passivity or disengagement. It is disciplined effort anchored in surrender. You show up fully, you prepare, you plan, you work with excellence, but you do not carry outcome as if they belong to you. You recognize the limit of your control and place trust where it truly belongs. This is not a lack of ambition. It is ambition tempered with humility. When control becomes your comfort, anxiety inevitably becomes your companion. Every deviation feels like a threat. Every delay feels like danger. The nervous system remains on the edge because it has been asked to do what only trust can do. Peace becomes impossible not because life is unstable, but because the heart is trying to replace Allah as a manager of its affairs. You cannot experience tranquility while carrying a responsibility that was never meant to be yours. Letting go of the illusion of control does not mean letting go of effort. It means returning outcomes to Allah and allowing your striving to become lighter, steadier, and more sincere. Now, let's talk about ambition that is rooted, not frantic. Ambition that is anchored in purpose feels different in the body and in the heart. It is no rush. It moves with steady rhythm that allows for effort without panic and rest without guilt. When ambition is guided by purpose, delays are not immediately interpreted as threats. Pauses are not seen as failures. There is room to recalibrate without self condemnation because movement is not driven by fear of falling behind, but by clarity about where you are going and why. When Allah is the anchor, effort carries meaning, even when results are slow or invincible. You are no longer striving to prove your worth or secure your place. You are expressing worth that has already been granted. Your work becomes extension of service rather than a negotiation for value. There is a quiet confidence in this kind of ambition, not because outcomes are guaranteed, but because the heart knows who it is accountable to. Excellence in career is often misunderstood as speed, intensity, or relentless productivity. But Exxon was never about how fast you move. It is about how sincerely you show up. It is about doing what is entrusted to you with excellence while remaining unattached to the applause or the recognition or immediate reward. You care deeply about quality, but you do not let praise or criticism determine your inner stability. This is not indifference, it is freedom. A believer's ambition should stretch them, refine them, and call them towards growth. It should expand their capacity for patience, for humility and contribution. But it should not hollow them out. When ambition begins to drain meaning, erode presence, or distance the heart from Allah, it has drifted from its rightful place. This is why burnout is so misdiagnosed. It is rarely just a workload issue. Many people carry heavy responsibilities without breaking. Burnout is more often a meaning issue. It arises when effort is disconnected from purpose, when striving is severed from sincerity, and when work is asked to provide identity, safety, or fulfillment that only Allah can sustain. But re-anchoring ambition in purpose does not reduce excellence, it restores it. And with it comes a steadiness that fear driven striving can never offer. Begin by gently noticing what fuels your drive. Do not rush to correct it yet. Just observe. Ask yourself with honesty and compassion whether your movement is coming from trust or from fear. The body often recognizes the answer before the mind is ready to admit it. Tension, restlessness, and chronic urgency are not moral failures. They are signals. Learning to listen to them is the first step towards realignment. Take time to write down what you believe will happen if you slow down. Not the explanation you offer others, but the story you carry privately. What do you fear will collapse? What do you fear you will lose? Fear loses much of its power when it is named in the presence of trust. Choose one area of your work where you intentionally practice restraint. This is not about disengagement or laziness. It is about refusing to overextend when fear is the only motivator. Restraint is a form of discipline. It teaches the heart that safety does not come from constant motion and that worth does not disappear when you step back. Even one boundary held consistently can recalibrate your nervous system. Re-anchor your day around Salah. Allow prayer to interrupt panic rather than be postponed by it. Let remembrance slow the internal rush and return you to perspective. Salah is not a break from responsibility. It is the place where responsibility is rightly ordered. When remembrance becomes the center, urgency loses its grip. Finally, redefine success for this week, not as speed, not as output or visible progress, but as alignment. Did your action reflect your values? Did your effort feel sincere rather than frantic? Did you move with trust rather than fear? Acceleration impresses others. Alignment steadies the soul. When success is measured this way, progress becomes quieter, deeper, and far more sustainable. O Allah, purify our ambition from fear and effort from anxiety. Grant us drive that is rooted in trust, discipline that is anchored in sincerity, and goals that draw us closer to you, not further away from you, Ya Rab. Protect us from chasing safety at the cost of purpose. Place barakah in our striving and tranquility in our heart. Make us people who move with intention, not panic, and who rely on you without neglecting effort. Ameen Ya Rabbal Alameen. You were not created to live in constant urgency. You were created to move with purpose. Ambition is not the enemy. Fear is a poor leader. When you walk with Allah, you still strive, but you no longer sprint blindly. Your effort becomes focused. Your heart becomes steadier. Your path becomes clearer. You do not need to slow down to be faithful. You need to realign. Take one step today that is driven by trust, not fear. Your career will not collapse when Allah is its anchor. Until next time, stay grounded, stay sincere, and remember that how you move matters just as how much as where you are going. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.